No one ever expects the woman who once said, "You're nothing without my son," to end up sobbing into your voicemail at 3 a.m., begging you to save the same man she once claimed was far too good for you. But that's exactly where Susan is now, and somehow I've become the last person she thinks can rescue her perfect, sinking world. 3 months ago, I was choosing centerpieces and tasting cake samples, convinced I was building a future with Brett, the man I had loved for 3 years. Now I'm living in my best friend Angela's spare room, scrolling through apartment listings with the kind of hollow numbness that only heartbreak and betrayal can create. I keep asking myself how everything fell apart so fast, but the truth is, the cracks had been there all along. I just refused to see them. Brett and I met in 2021, a sweet, ordinary beginning that felt like certainty. We were inseparable within months. We moved in together after a year and a half, dreaming up the kind of life young couples think they're destined for. House, kids, Sunday morning pancakes. I believed all of it because he made me believe it. But the first time he introduced me to his parents, something shifted. His dad, Walt, was quiet but kind in a distant way. His mother, Susan, though, she wore this tight, brittle smile that never touched her eyes, the kind of smile that feels like a warning. She spent the entire dinner interrogating me about my family, my upbringing, my background. When I mentioned that my dad works construction and my mom is a school aide, her expression twitched. Just enough to reveal the truth before she covered it back up. Brett brushed it off later. "She's just protective," he said. "She's old-fashioned. Don't take it personally." Love makes you stupid sometimes, and I was stupid enough to believe him. When he proposed at a little B&B upstate, I said yes with my whole chest. I didn't care about backgrounds or connections or summer homes in the Hamptons. I loved him, so we planned a medium-sized wedding. Nothing extravagant, something warm, personal, ours. But the moment we announced our engagement, Susan shoved herself into every decision like she was staging a royal coronation. At first, I mistook it for helpfulness. She had vendor contacts, recommendations, spreadsheets, but very quickly it became clear that she wasn't helping. She was taking over. My venue was shabby. My catering choices were not appropriate for their family. My dream dress was cute, but a bit cheap-looking, don't you think? Every decision she stole from me was another drop of water wearing down stone. Wedding planning stopped feeling like a celebration and started feeling like I was auditioning to be part of their family, a role I was never going to be good enough for in her eyes. The night everything snapped was during a dinner at their house. Susan invited her friends, wealthy, bored women who treat social status like oxygen. I realized I was being displayed, analyzed, silently graded like livestock at auction. When one of them asked where I summered, I laughed, thinking it was a joke. When I answered honestly, camping trips, visits to my grandma, the table froze like I'd confessed to a crime. Later, while I helped clean up, Susan cornered me. She started by mentioning Brett's ex, Melissa, her favorite topic. Melissa, who came from a good family, who summered in the Hamptons, who would have been a better fit. Then she looked me dead in the eye and dropped every mask she'd been hiding behind. She told me I wasn't from the right world, that I lacked refinement, that I'd embarrassed Brett, that I didn't know how to move in important circles, that he deserved someone who matched his potential, not someone who dragged him down. For a moment, I physically couldn't speak. It was like someone unplugged my brain. When I finally managed to tell her she was being unbelievably rude, she laughed. Actually laughed. A cold, condescending little sound that still makes my stomach twist, and then she hit me with the line that would haunt me for months. "You are nothing without my son." I walked out of that kitchen shaking. I told Brett everything in the car, praying, hoping he'd stand up for me. Instead, he defended her. Maybe she didn't mean it like that. Maybe I misheard her tone. Maybe I was being too sensitive. That was our first real fight, and the first time I realized I might be fighting alone. Over the next 2 weeks, Brett grew distant. Suddenly, he had questions about our compatibility, about our backgrounds, about kids, events, expectations, concerns he'd never had before. Susan started poisoning his mind. Then came the dinner from hell. Susan invited us over, promising to apologize. Like an idiot, I believed it. Instead, she spent the entire meal criticizing me with soft voiced barbs meant to sound polite but cut like razors. When Brett stepped outside to take a call, she leaned across the table and delivered her final verdict. Walk away before you ruin his life with your ordinariness. I cried. She rolled her eyes. My existence offended her. My emotions proved her point. When Brett came back inside, I was packing my things. His mother lied through her teeth, pretending I'd misunderstood her helpful advice. That was it. In the car, I told him he needed to choose. Either we cut contact with his mother, or the wedding was off. He chose her. I slipped the ring off my finger, placed it on the dashboard, and asked him to drive me to Angela's place. He didn't even try to stop me. The next day, I moved out. He texted later, confused, unsure, wanting time to think. 3 years together, and he couldn't even properly break up with me. I told him not to contact me again. Since then, he's been telling everyone we mutually decided to call off the wedding. Meanwhile, I've been rebuilding my life brick by brick. And today, after months of silence, Susan is calling me nonstop, crying, begging, suddenly certain that I'm the only person who can save her son. Sometimes your life falls apart slowly, and sometimes it crumbles in one violent, earth-shattering avalanche. For me, the avalanche came after the breakup. Silent, messy, and impossible to stop. The first month living at Angela's place felt like walking through fog. Every morning I woke up reaching for Brett, muscle memory stronger than logic, only to hit an empty pillow and remember everything all over again. My appetite disappeared. My sleep was wrecked. I lost 10 pounds without trying, which would have thrilled Susan if she weren't too busy drowning in her own crisis. Angela, bless her soul, noticed everything before I did. She started leaving protein bars on the coffee table because I kept forgetting to eat. She checked in without hovering. She gave me space, but never let me sink too deep. The woman deserves a sainthood. Still, I couldn't bring myself to commit to a new apartment. Every listing I scrolled through felt like an admission that the life I'd imagined, home, marriage, future, was officially dead. Signing a lease felt too final, too real. After 3 weeks, Angela gently nudged me to go look at an apartment in her friend's building. Nothing fancy, small bedroom, tiny kitchen, a living room that could barely fit a couch, but it was within my budget. Safe and close to work. Something about it felt quiet, manageable, mine. I signed that same day. I wasn't ready, but I signed anyway. Moving in was a whole other battle. I left most of my furniture behind at Brett's place because the thought of arranging movers made me physically ill. So Angela and her boyfriend dragged me through IKEA, picking out a bed, a tiny couch, a table that doubled as a workspace. The apartment stayed nearly empty for weeks because I couldn't bring myself to decorate it. It felt like a temporary stop, like I was living in someone else's life. Work became my escape. I arrived early, stayed late, volunteered for tasks no one wanted. My boss noticed, of course. Suddenly I was coordinating department meetings, training the new hire, handling more responsibility than my job required. But being needed felt good. Being valued felt even better. 2 months after the breakup, I ran into Nick, Brett's brother, at the grocery store. I nearly hid behind a cereal display, but he spotted me before I could escape. He looked awkward, guilty even, then he apologized. Not a half-hearted apology. A real one. He said his mom was wrong, that she'd treated me terribly, that he'd argued with her about it. It didn't erase anything, but it validated something I'd been screaming into the void for months. I was not crazy. She really was that awful. And that's when I learned that Brett's perfect facade was cracking. He'd lost weight. Lost motivation, lost direction. His job performance was slipping. Tension was high at home. Susan was panicking, but in secret, of course. She'd never publicly admit her golden boy was tarnishing. A week later, Angela pushed me to attend a party, a small gathering, nothing major, but I nearly refused. She all but shoved me out the door. "You need to remember you're a person," she said, which stung only because it was true. And that's where I met Matt. There was no lightning strike, no cinematic romance moment, just easy conversation, normal laughter, and a sense of peace I didn't know I was starving for. He asked for my number before he left, and I surprised myself by giving it. Our first date was simple. Coffee on a Sunday morning, but it was the first time in months I forgot Brett existed. Matt was soft-spoken, intelligent, grounded, no airs, no ego, no family obsessed with social rank. His apartment looked like a guy actually lived there. Not curated, not staged, just normal. And when I told him the shortened version of my breakup, he just listened. No advice, no pity, just presence. Around the same time, work presented an opportunity that felt too big for me. A new team, a new leadership role, longer hours, more stress. My manager encouraged me to apply, though she warned the competition would be fierce. I doubted myself, but something pushed me to try. 3 rounds of interviews, a presentation I rehearsed until 2 a.m., meetings with department heads and upper management. When I left the final interview, I convinced myself I didn't get it. 2 weeks later, my manager pulled me aside and smiled. "Congratulations!" The raise wasn't massive, but it was life-changing enough. Suddenly, rent didn't feel like a threat. Bills weren't a drain. I could afford groceries without checking my bank account twice. I was still riding the high of that promotion when I ran into Rita. Yes, that Rita, one of Susan's snooty friends at the mall. She practically chased me down, acting overly sweet and nosy, and then she gleefully dropped the bomb. Brett was fired. The big project he used as an excuse to think about our relationship completely blew up. He was let go. He moved back home. He's spiraling. I held my face still, but inside, it was like watching a storm destroy a house I no longer lived in. Rita also revealed something else, something Susan would rather die than admit. Melissa, the beloved ex, had briefly gotten back together with Brett after our breakup. She dumped him again within weeks. The universe has a sense of humor, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. One night, Matt and I were having dinner downtown when I saw her, Susan. She was sitting across the restaurant, stiff and tense, but when she spotted me, her face changed. Strange, hopeful, too eager. And then she actually got up. She walked to our table. And for the first time since I met her, Susan greeted me like I was royalty, complimented my outfit, asked about my new job, information she should not have known. When she realized Matt was my date, her smile tightened so hard it looked like it might crack her teeth. The days after Susan's sudden friendliness felt like walking through a haunted house. Every corner held another unexpected jump scare. Angela kept reminding me, that woman doesn't change unless something breaks. And she was right. Something had broken. Badly. A week after the restaurant incident, Angela forwarded me a screenshot of a Facebook message Brett had sent her. Suddenly, he wanted to know how I was doing, whether I was seeing anyone, if I ever missed talking. She didn't reply, obviously, but it rattled me, coming from him or coming through his mother. Either way, they were circling. Then the whispers started through mutual friends. Brett was struggling. Drinking more, sleeping until noon, arguing with his father, refusing to look for stable work. The same man whose mother said I wasn't good enough was falling apart without anyone to blame. Meanwhile, life with Matt was peaceful, slow in the best way. He helped me hang shelves in my apartment. He brought over groceries when I was tired. He didn't try to fix me, just walked beside me while I rebuilt myself. We started talking about maybe moving in together when his lease ended. I was starting to breathe again. And then came the voicemail. I almost didn't play it. Unknown number, late at night, but I hit play and Susan's voice filled my room, broken, shaky, unrecognizable. She said she'd been trying to reach me, that Brett wasn't doing well and that she'd made a terrible mistake. She practically begged me to meet her. 3 months ago, she called me nothing. Now she needed me. For 3 days, I ignored the call, but the anxiety sat on my chest like a weight. I needed closure. So I texted Brett's new number with a simple message asking what was going on. 5 minutes later, Susan called. Not Brett. Susan! It turned out she'd been using his phone because I'd blocked her number. Desperation oozed from every word. She apologized, not in a fake, polite way, but a trembling, messy spill of regret. She admitted she judged me for background, upbringing, connections, everything she once pretended didn't matter. Then she said the sentence that nearly made me drop the phone. He was better when he was with you. He needs you. You're the only one who can help him. The woman who built her entire identity around social class was now begging the ordinary girl she once dismissed to glue her son back together. I agreed to meet her, not because I cared, but because I needed to look the ghosts in the eye. At the coffee shop, she looked human, tired, defeated. And for an hour, she unloaded every detail of Brett's decline, his job loss, his debts, his drinking, his refusal to get up in the mornings. She hinted, not subtly, that things were easier when I was in his life, that I kept him grounded, that I made him better. I finally asked the question haunting me. Why me? After everything you did to drive me away? Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't earned. Because you're the only one he ever listened to. For the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just freedom. I told her I'd think about it, but made zero promises, and that's when things spiraled. The next day, she called again, then again, then again, asking if I'd talk to Brett, asking if I'd recommend him at my company, asking if I could just check in on him. It escalated to the point where she actually showed up outside my workplace, clutching his resume, mascara smeared, asking if I could put in a good word. Coworkers stared. It was humiliating, infuriating. That night, I snapped. I told her clearly, firmly, without a single crack in my voice, if you contact me at work again, I'll report it as harassment. I am not your son's caretaker. We are not getting back together, and you need to stop inserting yourself into my life. The shock on her face was almost comical. No one had ever spoken to Queen Susan that way. That same evening, Brett finally texted me, a long apology, a confession that he'd made a terrible mistake, that he listened to the wrong voice, that he missed me, that he was ashamed. I read the whole message. I felt absolutely nothing. That was the closure. I wrote back once, calm, direct, final. I told him I forgave him. I told him our story was over. I told him to get help, and I told him not to contact me again. I blocked both their numbers immediately afterward, but Susan didn't stop. She started making new accounts, emailing me from random addresses, even mailing handwritten letters. The desperation turned into anger. She accused me of being heartless, of abandoning her son, of throwing away our history. The same history she spent 3 years degrading and destroying, and then came the final straw. Matt and I were having dinner at my apartment when someone knocked on the door. I opened it and froze. Brett stood there, disheveled, smelling like alcohol, eyes glassy, and behind him, Susan, hovering like a frantic shadow, both of them on my doorstep. Matt stepped beside me, calm but protective, and the look in Brett's eyes when he realized I had someone else in my life was almost sad. Pitiful. I didn't invite them in. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door partway behind me. Brett tried to talk about our past. Susan kept interrupting. Finally, Brett snapped. Not at me, but at her. He told her he didn't even want to come, that she forced him, that this wasn't helping. Then he turned to me and apologized, truly apologized, for not protecting me back then or now. It was messy, sad, human, and it was the final proof I needed that the man I once loved was gone long before our relationship ended. 5 days have passed since then, Nick texted once to say he was taking Brett to his first Gamblers Anonymous meeting. I thanked him and didn't ask for updates. Matt and I are going away this weekend. Just the two of us, somewhere quiet, somewhere new. I changed my email, told my manager about the unwanted visitors. Life is moving forward.